Welcome to the Dive Heart First podcast. I'm your host, Jen Walker, and I couldn't be more excited to be with you here today. This podcast has been on my heart for quite a while now, and its mission is simple. Essentially, I have a lot of tips and I have a lot of tricks up my sleeve that are highly valuable and useful, something that I have personally spent countless hours and thousands of dollars learning, and I'm interested in giving it all to you for free. So think of this podcast as your personal resource jackpot on anything and everything, mind, body, and spirit that will enhance, elevate, and expand your life with ease. And in this first episode, I thought it might be fun to introduce myself. Who am I? What brought me to right now? And what can you expect with the Dive Heart First podcast? So to do all that, I have to take you back, way back to literally the very beginning. As I like to joke that I've been doing this work all my life. And what I mean by that is I came into this world an extremely sensitive soul, feeling the weight of the world, feeling other people's energy and their emotions. And more than that, having some pretty epic sized emotions myself. I remember this day in grade 1 that shifted a lot for me in my life. I was being dropped off to class by my mom, and I was in a very big emotion. I was all up in my feels, bawling my eyes out. And in a moment, I just looked out to my classmates, and I will never forget the look on their faces as they looked completely confused and shocked with my behavior. And from a young person's mind, in that moment, I interpreted that and internalized that as there's something seriously wrong with me. And it was in that moment and that day that I decided to shut up and shut down, completely shutting down expressing emotions going forward. And although that might sound horrible, it has led me to other strengths and other advantages that I still enjoy today. So that day led on to about a decade plus of being so silent and shy and like a fly on the wall. And I would listen so deeply and intently to people. And I would listen with more than just my ears. I would listen with all my senses. I would watch them and their little micro movements of their face, their posture, their body language, and I would feel their emotions and their energy. And I still remember this as a kid, just watching and listening to two adults have a conversation. And I would be listening to the words that were spoken, but knowing that it was very incongruent to what the person was actually thinking and feeling. And so essentially, I was doing deep study and research on human behavior and human interaction without even knowing it. Also, during this time, because of my deep sensitivity, I was subconsciously interested in controlling my environment as much as I could to make it feel good and to make it feel safe. And I got from a really young age that it made my mom really happy when I did well in school. And it made my dad really happy when I did well in sports. So from a really young age, I got the assignment. I became an academic for my mom and an athlete for my dad, and I went into hyper achiever mode. And I gotta say, I was pretty good at it. I got the grades, I got all the gold stars, got the awards, I got the recognition, and it served me well. It served me well right until the end of university. And I remember at that time, my ringette team, we had just won our second national championships. I was just awarded with MVP of my varsity lacrosse team. I was an OUA All Star. I was on the Dean's honor list. I had done all the courses and I could go in any direction that I would choose. And I remember this day of complete and utter overwhelm because I didn't know what I wanted to do. And it was in that moment that I realized and recognized for the first time that I had never made a decision for myself in my life. I had always made a decision that I knew would make another person happy, that I knew would please others, and that I knew I would get praise or recognition for. So in that moment, I went rogue. And the next day, I went out to breakfast with some newer friends. And this is where I think the universe conspires for us. So I was out to breakfast with some newer university friends, and they were about to head to Europe to go backpacking for 3 months, and they invited me. They were leaving in 2 weeks. I didn't even have a passport. Nothing about it made sense. And yet everything in my body knew it was the right thing for me to do. It was the first time that I listened to my inner knowing. I listened to my heart and I did all the things. I got a rush on the passport. I borrowed a backpack from another friend. I bought a flight and everything just came together. And in 2 weeks' time, I was backpacking around Europe, 12 different countries in Western Europe and Africa over 3 months. And it was a life altering experience for me. It was the first time that I got distance from my life at home and I got perspective. It was also the first time that I saw my own cultural conditioning whilst at the same time being exposed to different cultures, languages, foods, and different ways of doing things. So in that time, I just saw all the possibilities, all the things, and all the lanes and all the paths that I could go down. And yet still, I had no idea what I truly wanted. So that spurred on more self-discovery and a decade plus of becoming a nomadic traveler, traveling to over 40 countries and living in spots like Australia, England, and BC. And during that time, I was mainly working with the human body for work. So I did my undergraduate degree at McMaster University in kinesiology. And I actually worked as a kinesiologist. I worked as a personal trainer. And I thought I was going in the direction to become an osteopath. So, en route to there, I decided to do a massage therapy diploma to bridge me into osteopathy. And I remember writing my board exams for massage therapy while the same weekend starting my first day at CCO, Canadian College of Osteopathy in Toronto. And I thought I had it all figured out. I'm like, okay, I got it. I know what I want. Here we go. Let's do the thing. And spoiler alert, I had nothing figured out. So after a year of studying osteopathy, I came to the very inconvenient and uncomfortable truth that it wasn't it. And what was even more uncomfortable about that is that I didn't know what it was. So I continued to just see what was out there for me. I continued to travel and I just became curious of what came my way. And what ended up coming my way was sales. So I actually did some door-to-door sales and gym membership sales in Australia. I also did some surgical medical device sales on Vancouver Island and some educational travel sales in Toronto. And although it might seem to you you that working with the human body and doing sales are two separate things. For me, I constantly was seeing the common theme or the common thread that I was interested in with both of those things. And it was the psychology. And this is where I think life is cute. It leaves clues. You can look back and you're like, oh, that's so obvious. But in the moment, it might not be so obvious. So when I went to university, I inadvertently did a psychology minor and almost a double major just by all the elective courses that I took because I just couldn't get enough. So it was the picture was starting to become clearer, and it was my time living in London, England from 2008 to 2012 that I really started to cement things for me. When I was there, I was working as a sports massage therapist and a personal trainer. And I always would say, like, I arrived there and I had a horseshoe up my arse. And what I mean by that is the people I met, the connections I had, the clients, the people I got to work with, my mentors, everything was again life-changing experience. In that time, I got to work with some really top performers in all areas of life. So a lot of athletes, elite athletes, professional athletes, Olympians, and then top performers in industries like business and finance and law and consulting. And with that, what was really cool about that is I would have weeks where I would talk to somebody that was just about to go leave to climb Everest. And the next week, I was talking to somebody else that just came back from running 100 miles in the Scottish Highlands. And that was typical. So the exceptional was part of my everyday. And the coolest thing about that is I had access to these people. And I had access to their minds, the way they thought about things, the way they approached life and what they did. And I also had access to their teams. So that led me in being paired with different mentors that just opened up a whole new world for me of how the mind connects with the body. So if you do enough learning with the body, it will naturally lead you to the mind. And if you do enough learning with the mind, it will naturally lead you to the body because it's one of the same. So one of those mentors I was exposed to introduced me to something called Haikomi, which is a body-centered psychotherapy. So that was leading me down a path of really understanding patterns in the musculoskeletal system that were rooted in subconscious programming and things like that. Also, during that time, I was reading books and watching movies. And one of the books I read was at that time, it had just come out and it was The Brain That Changes Itself. And it was the first time that we were talking about neuroplasticity and that the brain can actually change. Before we thought the brain was fixed. So that really advanced things in neuroscience. Also, just in my free time, my spare time, I would watch movies that I was personally interested in. And one of the movies, if you've ever watched it, What the Bleep, I watched that back then, and it opened up this big interest in learning things like quantum physics, which then led to epigenetics. So during this time in London, England, I was working as a personal trainer and a sports massage therapist, and I was a closeted neuroscience nerd. And on my weekends and evenings and holidays, I would thumb through books and things on quantum physics. And it was really interesting because I have always loved science, and I didn't grow up with any sort of religion or spiritual connection. And it was through my study in science that actually led me to my spirituality. And so I always joke that, like, I dare you to learn anything about quantum physics and not be in complete awe awe and wonder about what this is all about. So that was my time in London, England, and things started to become very clear. And I moved back home. I moved back to my home province, Ontario, Canada. And I would say that transition was a little bit challenging to navigate. I had been gone so long that I didn't know how I fit in anymore or if I even fit in. Also, during that time, I had a loved one, a family member that passed away, and I also went through a relationship breakup and a huge, huge heartbreak. And those three things catapulted me into what I like to refer to as my personal development era, where I was doing all the things to relieve my own personal suffering and pain. So I was taking the courses, I was reading the books. Podcasts were definitely not a thing back then. So I was listening to my MP3 player and different audio tracks. And that led me to Tony Robbins. And Tony Robbins at that time was a very big influence to me. And I ended up just with curiosity of wanting to understand my own behavior and other people's behavior. I did his coaching program. So I did the Robbins Madonna's training and with no intention of ever becoming a coach. That wasn't a thing on my mind or an interest at that time. I just did it because I was so curious in learning more about the human psyche. So had all that. I cleared a lot of stuff in my body, in my mind, and I was on a really good track. And I was working, doing sales in Toronto, worked with some amazing people. Still love these people today. Had a great time in Toronto. It was really a fun time in my life. And I remember this day, and it was a day that I will talk about on another podcast where something just shifted and it shifted forever. And I just remember being hit like with a ton of bricks of I have all this information. It has been so helpful and useful to me, and I must share it. It got to a point where I felt almost selfish if I held on to and like hoarded this information and didn't give it to other people. So that was the day that Dive Heart First Coaching was born. And that is 9 years ago now. And I look at my life now, and these last 9 years have been wild. So, up until that point, things were cute. You know, I was studying, I was learning the theory, the tools, the techniques. When I started Dive Heart First, just being in business and also things in my personal life, it was like, okay, now put it to practice. It was like started to do the field research of do these things actually apply to real life? Turns out they do. But life just really has been handing me things over the last 9 years. So it's been amazing and hard and difficult and definitely expanding. And I have gotten to put these tools to good use. And that is what brings me to right here, right now, where I have never been more grounded in my body and unapologetically listening to my intuition. I also, in this point in my life, am absolutely obsessed with rapid brain change. So, again, we know so much more about the brain than we ever have. So, I just love it. We can clear things that have been troubling people for days or decades within a session. So fast, fun, and really effective way. And that is what you can expect with the Dive Heart First podcast. I'm going to share what I like to call Jedi Mindset Tricks, which are quick tricks, tools, techniques to clear anything that is no longer serving you in the ways of thinking or feeling in a fast, fun, fun, and effective, and lasting way. Usually these techniques will be steeped in somatic practices, in hypnosis, and NLP, neuro-linguistic programming. And the cool thing about that is when we clear out the noise, we clear out the static, and then you become a clear channel to listen to yourself, to listen to your intuition. So that is also something we will chat about quite a lot in this podcast, is flexing into your intuition, as I believe your intuition is the biggest cheat code in life. It's a strong signal. It's always there. And the more we listen to it, the more life just becomes comical and we flow with it versus against it. And I'm going to be sharing stories like this one, definitely some scientific studies, and much, much more. So if you like the sounds of that, I say go in, touch all the buttons. So like, subscribe, follow, rate, share, comment. Don't be a stranger. Just go into whatever platform you are in right now, touch all the buttons, and do all the things. And until next time, thank you so much for spending part of your day with me. I love you, and go out and have an absolutely tremendous day.